You wake up, stare at the ceiling, and feel the heavy, almost physical friction of a mind that simply does not want to move. You tell yourself that if you just wait a little longer, a spark of motivation will finally arrive and the work will become easy. But psychologists have a name for what happens while you wait. They call it the trap, the trigger, response, avoidance pattern. You feel a flicker of discomfort about a heavy task, so you put it off. Your brain rewards that avoidance with a quick burst of relief, which feels exactly like rest. But it is actually a trap, training your nervous system to avoid harder the next time. Less action lowers your mood, which leads to even less action. Every time you wait for a feeling that never comes, you are quietly teaching your brain a story about who you are. The avoidance compounds over months and years, writing an identity built entirely around apathy, proving to yourself that you are someone who simply does not follow through. Treating motivation as a prerequisite keeps you paralyzed. The momentum you keep waiting for is hidden on the other side of the first step, but you keep refusing to take that step until you feel the momentum. Motivation is the exhaust of the engine. It is a byproduct that only appears after the engine is already running, which means waiting for the feeling is a reliable way to ensure you never start. About 100 years ago, a researcher named Bluma Zygarnik sat in a busy Vienna cafe and noticed a strange behavioral quirk. She watched waiters taking complicated orders from large tables without writing a single thing down. They delivered plate after plate from memory with flawless accuracy. But the moment a bill was paid and the table was cleared, the waiter forgot the order entirely. The finished task vanished from their minds. When Zygarnik took this observation into the lab, she proved that people remember started but unfinished tasks roughly twice as well as completed ones. An open loop creates a psychological tension in the brain, a low hum that refuses to go quiet until the job is resolved. The biological pull of a task literally does not exist until you begin. You cannot feel the tension of a chapter you never opened. Starting is the hardest part, because that is the only way to activate the psychological pressure that makes you want to finish. This sequence is so deeply rooted in our biology that it forms the basis of a frontline treatment in clinical psychology. It is called behavioral activation, and it was built to treat severe depression, the kind where a person cannot find a reason to do anything and motivation is entirely absent. The standard approach would be to wait for the patient to feel better before encouraging them to act. But the clinical reality is the reverse. Therapists mandate small, valued actions first, even when the patient feels at their lowest. The physical action lifts the mood as a direct result. You act your way into a new way of feeling. If you are waiting to feel a rush of drive before you start, you are likely relying on a popular misconception about dopamine. We often hear it described as the pleasure molecule, the reward that lights up when we feel good. Researcher John Salamone disproved that idea with a simple choice. He gave rats two paths. Down one, they could easily eat 2 food pellets. Down another, they could get 4 pellets, but they had to climb a physical barrier. Healthy rats climb the barrier almost every time. When he lowered the dopamine in their brains, the rats still happily ate the larger reward if it was handed to them. Their capacity for pleasure was intact. What they lost was the willingness to climb the barrier. They took the easy path and gave up on the effort. Dopamine functions as the chemistry of effort. It is the biological mechanism that translates a reward you can imagine into the actual physical energy required to achieve it. Taking action activates the dopamine system. The physical exertion itself manufactures the fuel required to keep the climb going. Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius felt the exact same resistance you do. He wrote about his own morning struggle to get out from under the blankets, facing the heavy duty of ruling an empire while wanting to stay warm and comfortable. He refused to negotiate with his feelings. He treated rising and acting as the simple expression of what he was, a human being made for work. He rose and did his part without complaint, just like the plants and the birds, treating action as a decision rather than a mood. You can apply this by shrinking the starting line down to a microscopic first step. This tiny movement triggers the zygarmic tension and starts the dopaminergic drive, bypassing the need for a perfect mood. A writer waiting for inspiration might spend years producing nothing. But if they commit to simply opening the document and writing one sentence, the price of starting drops to zero. That single sentence manufactures the momentum needed to write the rest of the page. When you act into discomfort without waiting for the mood, the feeling becomes a souvenir you collect after the work is done. Discipline is the act of physically moving your body while the internal voice is still arguing and generating excuses. You put on your shoes before the committee in your head has finished its debate. Moving on a decision rather than a feeling makes you weatherproof. You stop being steered by transient moods that change with the hours and start identifying as someone who simply does the work. I challenge you to take one microscopic first action in the next hour. Declare it in the comments below. Writing it down is a physical action, and you already know what that starts. Stop waiting for the spark. The drive is manufactured by the deed. The strongest version of you is waiting on the other side of your next physical action.